As part of your prediction in 2024, I believe it was, you said that the US would lose this war.
Right.
Why did you predict that the US will lose this war with Iran?
Because the American society does not have the political will, does not have the manufacturing capacity, and does not have the risk tolerance to fight this war in Iran. Basically, America wants to fight this war as cheaply, as easily, and as quickly as possible, right? So Trump really thought that, if I sent my airplanes to strike Tehran and kill the Ayatollah, they would just surrender. That was like literally his plan going into this war. He paid no attention to the culture. He paid no attention to the history of the Iranian people. He had absolutely no respect for the nation. And when you do that, when you disrespect your opponent, when you underestimate your opponent, and when you yourself are not willing to commit to the fight, you're going to lose.
So is Iran's game just to draw this out as long as they possibly can? How are they, because he's taken out the leaders. And do you also think that Trump thought that if I just bomb the leader, then everything will sort of regenerate itself and we'll be fine? What was the sort of fundamental misunderstanding?
There's a lot of confusion as to how this war started. Even today, no one actually knows how this war started. But I think that Trump, given his personality, he was convinced that if he killed the leadership of Iran, then they would have no choice but to surrender. And his proof of concept was, of course, on January 3rd of this year, Delta Force went into Venezuela, kidnapped Maduro, and they completely surrendered. So in Trump's mind, he wanted to replay the Venezuela scenario.
And he didn't realize that Iran is fundamentally different from Venezuela.
The short answer is he is a reality TV star. He thinks in terms of optics. He doesn't think in terms of like geopolitical strategy. The long answer is that the American military has become a very corrupt and insular institution that is trying to generate as much congressional funding as possible in order to fund the military-industrial complex.
Did he think that he was going to bomb Iran, the people would rise up, they would elect a new government, and that would be that, and then he could control Iran?
That's exactly what he thought. So what I want to do now is go to the map.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead.
And show you what he got wrong.
Okay.
All right. So this is a map of the Middle East. And the first thing to notice about this map is the topography.
What does that mean?
How many mountains you have. So this is what's really interesting is that the topography between Iraq and Iran are completely different. And this is important because in 2003, the Americans invaded Iraq and they won the war in about 2 weeks. And the reason why they won the war is the Americans practiced something called shock and awe. And the idea of shock and awe is that it is a military strategy that believes that if you cut off the head of the snake will die. A decapitation strike. And so what they did was they went into Baghdad, seized Baghdad, and the regime collapsed and the war was over. And they were able to do this because of the topography. If you look at the map of Iraq, it's all flat, it's all desert, meaning that you can just fly in your planes, cut off the head of a snake, and the war is over. There's absolutely no way you can defend against airstrikes because you're entirely a desert. Now, let's look at the topography of Iran. And Iran, it's all mountainous. In fact, you can make the argument that Iran is a fortress. Okay? And so the first thing is that Iran can choose to fight a war of attrition.
What's a war of attrition?
A war of attrition is a game of uncle.
What's that?
Right. A game of uncle is where we don't have enough power to destroy each other. So what we try to do is we try to create pain points, leverage points, to force you to submit, to cry uncle, right? So because Iran is too large, and that's 92 million people, it's impossible for the Americans and Israelis to destroy Iran. So what you're trying to do instead is bomb enough targets so that they recognize that resistance is futile and is surrender. Okay? That's the extent of the strategy. But again, the problem with this is that one, Iran is much too big. Number two is that it is a mountain fortress, which means that you can hide your weapons and your military inside mountains, right? Which allows you to conduct a guerrilla warfare strategy against your opponent. And this is exactly what Iran is doing right now, where their underground missile bases are hidden inside the mountains, and then they're able to strike targets throughout the Middle East, primarily American bases, but also energy installations that are key to the American petrodollar system. And so it's a game of uncle where the Americans are trying to create as much damage as possible in the Iranian nation, and Iran, in response, is trying to destroy as much of the global economy as possible to force the world to pressure America to call the war off. So that's a situation we are facing right now. Second thing that Trump got wrong is how vulnerable the global economy is. Because the Iranians control something called the Strait of Hormuz. Okay? And as you can see on this map, the Strait of Hormuz, it's a very, very narrow piece of land. It's only about 33 kilometers across. You can actually swim across the Strait of Hormuz. Okay? And why this is important is the GCC exports 20% of the world's energy.
The G what?
The Gulf Cooperative Council. Okay? So the Gulf Cooperative Council are certain nations in the Middle East that align politically. So they include Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait. They've been exporting energy, but not just energy, but also a lot of byproducts of energy production, including fertilizer, to the world, primarily East Asia and India. In return, they've been getting food back. So most people don't appreciate this, but the GCC actually imports 89% of its food needs. And the reason why is that they've become so rich these past few decades that the populations have blown up. And as a result, they have to feed their population, but they don't have agricultural resources. They also don't have water resources. And so they have two major vulnerabilities, which is food and water. And they have a lot of desalination plants around the area. And so...
It's a desalination plant.
Okay. So a desalination plant takes salt water from the seas and then through an electrochemical process, turns it into portable water that people can use for drinking purposes and for agricultural purposes.
Okay.
Right? So as you can see, the entire area, it is extremely vulnerable to drone and missile attacks from Iran. So that's the second thing that Iran has done, which Trump did not expect. He didn't expect that the Iranians would close off the Strait of Hormuz. And how the Iranians were able to close off the Strait of Hormuz was just by threatening to attack any ships that wanted to cross it. The reason why is that these ships depend on maritime insurance in order to operate. But if there's a risk, a very high risk of being destroyed, then you will not get insurance.
Okay.
So it's not that the Iranians have said to these ships, you can't cross. It's just that the insurers refuse to allow these ships to cross because it's too dangerous.
And Trump didn't, you think they'd consider this before they started bombing Iran, that Iran would have some leverage in shutting down such a critical piece of water for, shipping fertilizer, energy, etc. You'd think that they would have known this.
Right. So that's what a lot of people say, that Trump's stupid, that Trump is hot-headed, that he was misled by the Israelis. And there's good evidence to support this. But I want to show you something. Okay, it's called the National Defense Strategy. All right. And so this is a document that was published by the Department of War. And in it explains what the American strategy to maintain global dominance is. And in the introduction, what it says is that for too long, America has been bullied by the world. America is a nation that protects the world. Yet Europe, East Asia takes advantage of American generosity. The Europeans don't pay for their defense, and so they put all this money into welfare, into their pension system. The Chinese have been giving America a bad trade deal. The Chinese steal American technology and then use it to make products that they sell back to the Americans. So the Americans have been getting a really bad deal for decades. And President Donald Trump, he's going to change that by doing 4 things, right? The National Defense Strategy calls for a 4-point program to put America first. The first thing that America is going to do is going to secure the Western Hemisphere. Why? Because the Western Hemisphere belongs to the United States.
When you say the Western Hemisphere, what do you mean? What region is that? Is that Canada as well?
So if you look at a map, we can divide the map into the Eastern Hemisphere, okay, and the Western Hemisphere.
Okay, so everything over here.
Everything,
Mexico.
including Greenland, including Canada, including Mexico. Every part of this area belongs to the United States. Therefore, you cannot trade with any of these countries without American permission, without paying a tribute to the Americans. And this is why that the Americans have parked 1/3 of their naval assets in the Caribbean today. It's to tell the Chinese and the Russians, back off. If you want to come here, you either pay a tribute or you'll be attacked. Okay, that's the first point of this strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The Western Hemisphere belongs to America. Something that they call the Monroe Doctrine, okay, which is Trump's corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. Okay, so that's point 1. Point 2 is that America wants to reimagine its relationship with its allies. Basically, NATO needs to pay for its own defense. NATO needs to go fight Russia in Ukraine. America will provide support, it'll provide weapons and financing, but NATO needs to do more work. And in East Asia, South Korea and Japan need to do a better job of keeping China in check. Okay, that's point 2. Point 3 is specific to China. And the idea is the United States does not want to destroy China. The United States does not want to humiliate China, but China needs to be put in its place. China needs to respect the power and the reach of the United States. And how the United States is going to do this is by strangling China economically, right? So if you look at a map of China, most of its trade goes through something called the Strait of Malacca. And the Strait of Malacca is the most important maritime choke point in the world. All America has to do is park naval carriers inside the Strait of Malacca, and China will lose 90% of its energy exports.
But if they parked them there, China would still go through, no?
No, because you have to go for the Strait of Malacca. So America has something called the first island chain. Okay, and the first island chain prevents China from reaching the Pacific Ocean. The first island chain includes South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, and Malaysia. That blocks China from reaching out into the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for it to access trade, it has to go through the Strait of Malacca. And through the Strait of Malacca, it can access India, Africa, and the Middle East.
Okay.
Right? And so by positioning naval carriers inside the Strait of Malacca, it creates a blockade, and China would have to pay a toll in order to access the Strait of Malacca.
And the fourth one?
And the fourth one is to reinvigorate America's defense manufacturing sector.
So supercharge the US defense industrial base.
That's exactly correct. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So what this means is that the Pentagon a few weeks ago went to Detroit and talked to Ford and General Motors and said, you know what, because of this war in Iran, we might need you to stop making cars and start making more munitions and drones.
How do you know they said that? They published it?
They published it, yes.
Really?
Yes.
So the United States went to Forbes and GM and said, we might need you to start making weapons with your factories.
Yes, and they're happy doing this because the profit margins are much greater for weapons than for cars. This is the Pentagon, so you can charge them as much as you want, and they'll pay for it. Whereas you make cars, it's for the consumer market, and they may not buy your cars, right? So you're like Ford or General Motors. The best deal in the world is to go make weapons for the Pentagon to fight these wars in the Middle East that can go on for forever. So we're in a situation where, okay, look, if you read the news, if you talk to a lot of people, Trump's an idiot. And this war in Iran makes no sense at all. But then if you just read the National Defense Strategy that is on the Department of War website, and anyone can go there and download it for free and read it themselves, it's a very clear roadmap of what America needs to do in order to maintain imperial hegemony. And so let's just summarize the major points. The first major point is to maintain control over the Western Hemisphere and create a fortress America.
Which is why he invaded Venezuela, and he says he's going to invade Cuba.
Exactly.
And also Greenland.
Look at all the countries that he's named over the past year. Greenland, Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, Cuba, Colombia, Nicaragua, Honduras. It's all the Western Hemisphere, right? And they're all together. Second point is to create divide and rule all around the world. So imagine a situation where in Europe, NATO fights Russia in Ukraine. In East Asia, China fights South Korea and Japan. In the Middle East, Iran fights the GCC allied with Israel. What does America do? America can now sell everyone weapons and resources and finance it. This would be back to World War II.
But it makes them weaker as well, generally.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Right? And then what would happen is that $40 trillion that America has in debt, it would disappear because it would be absorbed by the world. Right? So you can say, look, Trump's an idiot, but if you actually look at a map and how America wants this world map to play out, it makes perfect sense.
So the war is going well for Trump?
The war is going very well for Trump.
Really?
Yes.
But you said in your prediction that he would lose the war.
Right.
What's your definition of lose the war?
Losing the war means that America would send ground troops, Iran would survive this ground invasion, and this would be so politically damaging that chaos breaks out in the United States, and the U.S. ground invasion is forced to retreat, and the United States is forced to retreat from the Middle East.
And you still think that's going to happen?
I still think that's going to happen.
So you think the United States are going to put ground troops in, Iran are going to resist, and then chaos is going to break out in the United States?
Yes.